recording. And just say today's weekly roundtable all around humanizing transformation is about us. It's about us. It's about how do we guide ourselves in our modern leadership development. And it's quite an interesting thing because, you know, we're running around trying to design and deliver projects and programs or make the work that we do better and help our teams and this, that, and the other. And we might go on leadership development programs, but is there something that that grounds us and guides us and gives us a frame that we can, you know, stretch and constrict and just, you know, grow with, that we always know that we can measure our own development? And, you know, when it comes to modernity, the answer, you know, in the majority would be no. But for us, the answer is absolutely yes, which is what I want to share with everybody today. Now, I love this little quote, and I always start this leadership roundtable with a wee bit of a quote. You can't delegate digital transformation for your company. You and your executives have to own it. Executives need to engage, embrace, and adopt new ways of working with the latest and emerging technologies. Now, that's very structural, it's very technical, it's very systems driven. But if that guy had a little bit of Mel around him for a wee while, he'd probably be saying, we need to change the way that we think as leaders. And that's so incredibly important. But equally, and don't you love that? Ross and Ross International, I've got nothing to do with the business. I just think that's absolutely fantastic. So it is all about who we are. It's all about who we are. So before I share with you what the guide is, you know, how we can measure, monitor, and create a frame around our leadership development, it's important to understand that our leadership development is not about getting better at what we do. It's about becoming truly who we are, personally and professionally, and to develop and to adapt who we are in terms of our identity and the way we think, in line and in speed with what's changing around us at a macro level. That's super important. So evolving who we are as a modern leader is what we need to do. So even more important for us to have a frame against which we can compartmentalize, create borders, guide, measure, and monitor. Those of you that know the framework will know that when I say guide, when I say frame, when I say boundary, the one thing I'm not saying is unify. We do not believe in unifying leaders to think in the same way, to be the same, which is very traditional. We recognize that in this modern age, with all of the complexities that we have around us, that there are multiple profiles that are required to effectively take organizations into a thriving future. And those profiles are what you see in front of you here. We have the settler, we have the pioneer, the explorer, and the voyager. And each one of these profiles has an incredibly important role to play in change adoption, in an organization becoming organizationally transformative in their own identity as a community. The settler is the leader that has the trust of the mass. The pioneer is the experimenter that brings ideation together, two ideas together to spark. They are the broker of data through human or technology. And you have the explorer, who is the person that is absolutely courageous enough to step into uncharted territory in order for the system that they are working within to thrive. So they're experimental, they are courageous, they are explorers. We also have the voyager, and the voyager is the leader that is the courageous explorer that doesn't necessarily want to drive the agenda of the system they're working within. They want to drive a cause or purpose that's bigger than that agenda, that's bigger than that system. That's the difference between the explorer and the voyager. The explorer wakes up in the morning to drive the system that they're working in into the future. The voyager wakes up in the morning to drive the world forward using the system as a vehicle. It's quite a different kind of nuance, isn't it, when you think about the two? but super, super important. And do you know something else that's really interesting? So we, have worked with thousands of leaders since 2013-14, thousands of leaders, and profiled them through using the profiling tool. And in the last 3 years, and I will say to you, this trend started pre-COVID, there has been a decided increase in the Voyager profile. So, we can say that COVID has dramatically accelerated digital transformation. Our data tells us that something had already started to happen. That's really interesting. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. So, it's not about unifying leaders or human systems to become the same way of thinking. It's about being able to unite from a unique place. If we can understand our uniqueness, we can unite. That's what's important. Now, in order for us to just head into what this frame and what the 7 dimensions are, it's important for you to know where they come from. And we aggregate the world that we live in into 3 very simple areas. We aggregate 3 macro drivers, and there's lots of different things, but they all fit in one of these 3. The pace of change is something that is absolutely real. It's documented. We have researchers and articles left, right, and centre being published. We know that the pace of change is incredibly important for us to understand that cadence and to see how we can, through our digital transformation strategies, build and design human transformation so that we are in line with that pace. We need to understand that pace and then design in line with it so that we can actually evolve in line with it. The next macro shift is inevitability. And all we mean by that is, just as I've mentioned earlier on with the statistic around the Voyager, is that change is happening anyway. There is an organic element to change that we must be aware of. And if we can understand the inevitability, then that is really important as well, because that means we can speed what's already happening. And certainly when you're thinking about bringing people on the journey with you, if you can get people to understand and to agree that there is an inevitability of change and transformation happening as opposed to being required, then you know that you can unlock a door. And the third macro piece for us is convergence. And what we mean really by convergence is the uniqueness of the time that we're living in. We have, as a human system over the last 150, 200 years, we have gone through 4, now 5 industrial revolutions. Industrial Revolution 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you have a look at them, they have consistently dehumanized us. They have consistently used the human as the machine. They have consistently broken down community. Now that sounds almost political, me saying that, but it's not. It's ethical, that what I'm saying. However, at the moment, we are in a parallel universe of the 4th industrial revolution, which is all about digital technology, with the 5th industrial revolution, which is all about humanity. So for the first time ever, where we're at with data and technology, data and digital, is this. It means that the humans can do what the humans are best at: socialize, ideate, create, empathize, strategize. We've never had that before. We've had to rely on the humans to do the machine work. We don't need to do that anymore. So the 5th and the 4th industrial revolution are where we get a convergence that gives us a very, very unique time in terms of where we're living in today. And that's super important. What that does, therefore, is it gives us what we call the 3 tenets. And the 3 tenets are the beginning of our framework, the Dilyn Way framework. The 3 tenets are really not a direct application of what I've just shared with you, but it's just how it kind of broad brush translation. We are, in our organization, in our project, in our program, in our work, in our own leadership practice, digitally transforming. And we want to find ways to consistently digitally transform, because there's no end state. Brilliant. We also want to become more human-centered. We want to become more community-focused. We want to bring that sense of belonging back into work. We also want to be more regenerative, more ethical, more conscious, more sustainable, thinking about any decision we make, anything that we're designing or developing. Are we genuinely, even if it's a leadership development program, are we applying critical thinking vis-a-vis ethics and sustainability to that? And that could be in the content of a leadership program, let alone the timing of it, the design of it, the technology that we use for it. So it's really important for us to understand these 3 tenets. And these 3 tenets sit in a wider framework. What I want to do today is I want to take us really down into one particular area, because that area that I've just ring-fenced there is what can give any leader immediately a frame and a guide for how they can measure and understand who they are, and then create and develop their own professional profile. And it is what we call the 7 mindsets. And that is what today is all about. These 7 mindsets are so important for every leader and worker to be exposed to and understand, in order for them to be able to start to place themselves against each one of these, and then to start to develop themselves against each one of these. And that's it. If we are able to learn and remember these 7 mindsets, and then with consistency start to develop ourselves across all 7, we know that who we are as a leader will evolve as a result, and will be congruent with anything that is ethical and digital, digitally transforming. We know that. We know that because we've got the research. We know that because we've got the data. So the digital native mindset is an important mindset because it brings 2 lenses to who we are as a leader. It isn't just about the kind of, the comic strip idea of a digital native that we expect, which is, always on my mobile phone, really, really comfortable around tech. I expect to be able to walk into a shop and they know who I am and what I bought last week, and how I'm feeling, and all of that kind of prediction and expectation and seamlessness always wherever I am. I was actually talking to somebody yesterday in the Middle East, and they were talking to me on their mobile phone, hands-free in the car. Drove into a garage, still able to connect with him, still able to talk, went in the lift, still able to talk, got out of the lift to his front door, still talking all the way through. We can't necessarily do that in the UK, but they're able to do that in the Middle East. And he said, "Oh my God, but I have that expectation. That's what I would expect if I came to the UK." And I'm like, that's a digital native expectation that you wouldn't get here in the UK. So it's very much about that. Yeah, it's the pervasiveness and the seamlessness and the prediction of the use of digital technology to enrich who we are. Right? The digital native doesn't want tech to distract them as much as they want it to enrich their life. Now, you might think that's a bit, hang on a minute, Mel, is that necessarily true? But if you have a look at the younger generations, I was talking with a group of young children last week, and the age range between 11 and 16. The majority, not all, the majority of them have got control mechanisms on their mobile phones so that they don't spend too much time on TikTok. Because they know that if they didn't have these control mechanisms, they'd get addicted to it. And I'm going, but you're 12 years old. Yeah, but Mel, I don't want the technology to control me. I'm in control of the technology. So, it's really, really, really interesting. Which brings me to the second half of this mindset, which is values. My goddaughter is a vegetarian because she doesn't want to hurt the animals. And she's been a vegetarian for years. Do you know how old she is? 8. Whether that's right or wrong is irrelevant. The fact is, she is living and breathing and actively participating in her values, as opposed to passively having values, but then compromising when she's in a community environment, when she's at work. So the values thing is a really important element of the digital native mindset. Thinking about that in ourselves gives us a frame in order for us to develop. The beginner's mindset, mindset 2, is a lovely one, because, you know, it really talks about what is as important as it, you know, to us as a leader as we ever have been. You know, adaptive leadership, systems leadership, resilience and courage, they are not new. They are not modern. They have been around for so long, but they are now being recognized as important. That's the key. And above that, we've got that beginner's mindset. It is no longer a leader's role to receive content to make the decision. It is now a leader's capability and skill to be curious. From content, we go to curiosity. And from curiosity, we build first principles thinking and experimental practice. There is a skill in experimental practice, just like having curiosity. That is part of the beginner's mindset, as well as a thinking stuff. The network mindset is beautiful because the network mindset allows us to be connected to each other, that community, to unite. It is about access to data, being connected to data. It's about being connected beyond our system so that we are geographically part of something and not necessarily coming to work every day and being part of a team and a department and a service area, and then the end of the day going home, and there's a separation between the two. What the network mindset is about is actually breaking down that social separation and having congruence between the two of them. The network mindset is a beautiful mindset. The authentic mindset is about who we are, but it's also about transparency, which is a little bit of a hint from the network mindset as well, isn't it? It's about how are we access all areas open. Traditional business and traditional leadership, governance, policy, rules are all based on it's got to be closed. And then what we'll do is we will work out how and where we open. In a modern system, if you look at agile governance and digital governance, that's more about let's start open and work out where and how we should close and for how long. So think open first, not closed. And that's a really interesting one for you to take into your work environment and just start to maybe see some of the rules that your organization has got, that your system's got, or indeed the mindset that some of the individuals you work with or the leaders that you report into have. Are they evidencing that closed first to open versus that open first to then close? Because in an ideal situation, we shouldn't need to close anything unless the safety and security of a human being is at risk. That's the only time. Data mindfulness, the only thing that I will say to us all about data mindfulness is this. Data mindfulness, our relationship with data as human beings, is how we have evolved as a human species. Because data is how we communicate. So we cannot decouple who we are from data. We are data, data is us. What we want to do as leaders, being data mindful, is to reconnect ourselves with data, to bring ourselves back into congruence with the data. There are 3 elements to data. We have got quantitative data, qualitative data, and increasingly we are recognizing intuitive data, which comes from within. And the truth and the accuracy of intuitive data is really blowing researchers' minds. The one thing that we need to make sure is that intuitive data, when it is applied, is controlling bias and is controlling ego. Which brings me to the prepared mindset. And that prepared mindset very famously is, I often think when I think about the prepared mindset, I think of an interview that I watched with Jeff Bezos, when Jeff Bezos said, somebody asked him, what do you do with your time? And he said, well, I'm at the top of the food chain of Amazon. What do you think I do with my time? I spend all of my time in the future. And he said, and that's what I just don't get about traditional business systems. The more senior you become in an organization, it's not about how much more you do. It's about how much less you do so that you can spend more time thinking about the future. What an interesting way of thinking about the organizational structure of a system, of a corporate system. The prepared mindset, of course, is about how we future-proof ourselves. So it's all about our frame of reference. If we are prepared, i.e. we have an understanding of the inevitability of what's coming on around the corner, we won't be scared when it happens. And equally, when something does happen, it won't be so incredibly unfamiliar that we will be a rabbit in the headlights and we'll freeze. Yeah, fight, flight, or freeze. We won't do any of that. We will be able to say, okay, there's something in here that I'm aware of. There's something in here that we can play with. There's something in here that we can work with. Lean into it and respond. So the prepared mindset allows leaders to innovate when others will only improve. And the final mindset is human-centered mindset. And the human-centered mindset is where we recognize every human being as equal and unique. We hyper-personalize everything. We do not design for the masses, which is how corporate businesses have been structured. We design for the few and build the competency for people to serve themselves. Hyper-personalization. Human-centered mindset is quite a tricky one for leaders to adopt and for leaders to work and develop, because it does rely heavily on what the system currently has in terms of data access for us, systems for us, cross collaboration between departments and services, and etc., etc. So the human-centered mindset really does take a lot of courage. So we lean into that adaptive beginner's mindset in order for us to really, help. And that brings me to something really important about these 7 mindsets that, again, gives you this guide, this frame. If you know nothing else other than these 7 mindsets and commit to using these 7 mindsets as your personal frame for development, you will not go far wrong. You will always be relevant, and you will be congruent, and you'll be able to perform, if not at your best, but certainly better than the majority. You will rise above the crowd. The 7 mindsets are dynamic. They are constantly evolving. Once you get into them, you got to self-serve your own understanding of them, because they're moving just like everything else is. Remember the pace of change, which was the first macro element. What's also really important to recognize is just looking at those 7 mindsets. Think about yourself against these 7 mindsets. If you were to place a colleague of yours against these 7 mindsets, you know that the result would be completely different. And then think about the person that you might be reporting into against these 7 mindsets. You know that they will be uniquely different. So it's relative. Our maturity and our development in these 7 mindsets is a completely relative and unique to us. And finally, holism. If we spike very high in one of these mindsets, what we have seen in our research is that you will become known by those around you as an expert in that area. So that when you spike in one or 2 or a few of these mindsets, you fall into being known as a label. If you can keep consistency across all 7 mindsets, you will be known as a profile. So other people will see you for who you are, not what you do. And you can see that a lot if you think about the traditional corporate systems that we work within, and you look at these 7 mindsets. You think of the different departments, you think about the different areas in your business, maybe in your project or program, and you'll recognize that in the majority, people that work over there are always higher and more mature in that mindset. People that work in IT and data and systems, digital native, network, data mindful, maybe a little bit of future focus, they're always scoring higher. Yeah, but they score lower on the others. Somebody that might be working in OD, people services or communications would have that authenticity, would have that human-centeredness, spiking higher. That is how the system has helped us evolve. What we're saying now is we need all of us to be across all 7. So it's who we are that gets appreciated within the system. Who we are gets promoted and recognized within the system, not necessarily what we do. So super important. So that is very simply the frame, the guide. It's not some voodoo hoodoo shamanic thing that I'm going to wizardry that I'm going to share with you. It's not this, I'm going to show you a competency framework for modern leadership. It's not. It's just these 7 mindsets. It's just your ability to understand them, to remember them, to get into them, and to consistently think about them as you evolve and think about your own professional development. That's what it's all about. Of course, they are part of something much wider. They are part of our wider framework, which is why we have the Practitioner Leadership Academy. And the framework is all about humanizing transformation. And if you think about what I've just been talking about today, can you imagine if we had only 16% of our leaders, building and committed to those 7 mindsets? How different would our corporate system be? How different would our sense of community be? How different would the presence of innovation versus improvement be within our department, within our service, within our entire organization? So this is a very important element of humanizing transformation and part of the wider framework. If we humanize transformation, we know and recognize that we can achieve agile at scale and accelerate our success, because we're building that resilience. We're building people's unique capability to be their better self, so that they challenge more, so that they do more, take initiative, etc., etc. Humanizing transformation is an incredibly important thing. If you would like to know more about this, please do let me know. And every Thursday afternoon, I've got my strategy sessions. This is where you get to understand a little bit about how this framework can apply to your system, where you are, where are you now, where are you going, what can we potentially do in terms of a process and a program to get you there. Notwithstanding, it wouldn't be right for me to end a leadership roundtable without 2 banana skins, which is what I always give to people. And we've talked about the 7 mindsets today. There are 2 things that we've got to be careful of. The first one I've already mentioned, spiking. You do not want to spike high in one of those mindsets, because what it will do, it will drop you into labeling. People will know you as a label. And what can happen is you can become a marginalized maverick, because if you spiked maybe an adaptive, digital or future focus, what that might do is it might start to build negativity in people around you, because you might be doing things that are a bit too much for the system, and they might see you as somebody that is doing things as opposed to somebody who is being modern and driving innovation. That's probably a little bit complex what I've just said there, but suffice it to say, in its simplest term, try and get consistency across all 7 mindsets. And the other thing is this: ego. It is so easy to look at those 7 mindsets and say, I got this. I understand adaptive. I got it. I'm connected to my people. I got it. Yeah, no, you don't. I don't. After working consistently, habitually on these 7 mindsets, I don't got it. I don't get it. I am constantly evolving my own definition and therefore my own practice of these 7 mindsets. It's really important for us to keep our ego in check when it comes to them, because there's no words there that are unfamiliar. There's no words there that are new, which means that you can kind of go, yeah, I know what it means to be, human-centered. I'm human-centered, I'm empathetic. Job done, Mel. Yeah. No, absolutely not. We really need to explore the depth and breadth of those 7 mindsets in order for us to truly perform at our best as a modern leader, and to be recognized, most importantly, to be recognized by others in terms of who we are as a profile rather than what we do. And certainly, when we start off with a group of leaders, I can guarantee you that the majority of those leaders would say to you, I'm definitely known for what I do. I am definitely recognized and rewarded for what I do. I'm not too sure that I can remember the last time that I was rewarded for who I am or recognized for who I am. And when you put the word modern in that falls down in evidence even further. There you go. So all I will say is, please, 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 if you haven't already started to explore your own professional development around those 7 mindsets, have a go, start thinking about it. If you'd like to know a little bit more, then you've got the Leading 4D community that you can join. It is free to join, and we're always conducting masterclasses and getting fantastic people from the field coming to talk to us about the wonderful stuff that they're doing, from places like Virgin and Ocado and Standard Chartered, etc. Experts coming to talk about their methods and models. We have challenges and small training in there as well. And of course, if you'd like to be a part of the leadership community, leadership practitioner community, that's where it's all housed as well. And there you go. So that's the end of today's session. I am a little bit ahead of time, thank goodness. You know, more often than not, I'm here and I'm whizzing my way to the end of these sessions. But what I'll do is I will stop recording now and just see whether, see how people have